Sure.
back to what you're doing treatment-wise. Yeah, I'd like to ask Jeffrey Rubin at this point, you know, hearing this and hearing it through your therapeutic ears and your spiritual ears, how you would conceptualize this in terms of defining the spiritual aspects of this and the psychological, and how then you would proceed with it.
First of all, I want to thank the Open Center for hosting this. Can people hear in the back? Yeah. I want to thank Bernie for introducing this idea of a case, which brings down to earth and into our lives the possibility of integrating spirituality and therapy instead of keeping it vague and mysterious. And I want to thank Sam for sharing this case, because I feel it's a very intimate gesture to share a case and to open yourself to feedback, and I'm really grateful for that. So I want to start with that. And the Association for Psychotherapy and Spirituality. Yes, to put it on. Yes. I'm at a disadvantage. Most of what Sam's sharing now, neither Locke nor I heard before. So it's difficult to fully engage this case because there's so much that's vital that we don't know. And knowing people deeply and knowing them intimately is central to the way I look at the integration of psychotherapy and spirituality, what I call meditative psychotherapy. That's my own conception of psychotherapy and spirituality. For example, we know little about her hopes and dreams, her fears and her self-doubts. I'd love to know what she draws on for nurturance and sustenance in the middle of the night when she begins to wonder if she'll ever be seen for who she is, and if she'll ever be loved, and if she'll ever have a family. I don't know what music inspires her. I don't know what people touch her soul. I don't know, in the write-up that we got from Sam, he talked about affirmative prayer. So I wonder, what's she affirming? Is she affirming the glory of God? Is she affirming the glory of existence itself? Is she affirming the glory of loving other people? Is she affirming the glory of her soul and her life? Is she seeking what she desires? I don't know that. Since I know so little, I think I have more questions than answers. What I'm going to do for a few minutes is just share how I might approach her if we were in the same room together. It seems to me that clients, patients, like our children, like our animals, pick up much more than we realize. They detect our expectations, they detect our biases, therapeutic, religious, or spiritual. So what's very important initially for me in my own work is to minimize the agendas and the intrusions that I bring to the work so that I can open up a potential space, a possibility that there's really enough room for the other person. So the treatment is about the other person, not me. Some of you know that I wrote Psychotherapy and Buddhism. There are many people that work with me that don't know that, and then there's a certain part of me that actually loves that. So the work's not necessarily about them coming to Jeffrey because Jeffrey's a Zen teacher in training and a psychoanalyst and has written this book, but because of the work that they want to do. Sam's client struck me as confused and sad, powerless and alone. So the second thing I try to do would make therapy a very, very safe space for that and for whatever else she valued and whatever else she struggled with and whatever else was a hidden potential, a hidden resource that we don't yet know about. While it looks like the one thing that she desperately wants is a husband and a child, I'd assume that her tendency to constantly choose controlling men and have unfulfilling relationships is both deeply troubling to her and it's also very familiar. So familiar, in fact, that she may not know any other way of connecting to a man is possible. So the first thing I would do is explore what in her earlier life led her to choose men who can't give her what she wants, and why she feels compelled to stay with men who don't show much evidence of working on themselves, don't show much evidence of being interested in self-examination, and want her to conform to them. Now, I'd assume that she and I would end up finding ourselves at exactly this characteristic impasse. In other words, she'd feel controlled and dissatisfied with me. And I'd assume that in the past, that was the best solution to a terrible dilemma that she had. And I'd assume that she and I might need to struggle to find a new way to be connected that was outside the narrow framework of her having to give herself up and conform to me.
How would you do that? How would you go out of that framework?
I would not have talked to her about religion and spirituality, number one, because my fantasy is that what may have happened is that she conformed to Sam the way that she had conformed to everybody else. And I would have to go deep within myself to sit in as open and patient a way for the totality of her agony and the totality of her strength and resources to be able to slowly emerge, almost like cat whiskers. Very slow, very, very tentative. It might be, Jeffrey, I don't quite know if maybe, perhaps, I was a little irritated with you last week. It might start as a faint, inchoate intimation of something, but I would view that as precious. And I think spirituality is wonderful. I think it's one of nature's, evolution's, God's greatest gifts to humanity. Where I'm different than a lot of people is that to me, spirituality, like psychotherapy, like anything else, has multiple meanings and multiple functions, from the most healthful and constructive to the most escapist and psychopathological. So I wouldn't assume from the beginning that anything was useful or not useful. I would try to see what she really needed. When I wrote a psychoanalysis for a time in 1998, and I have to date it for a reason because it was before 2000, it was before 9/11, I realized that most therapists are customs officials. What's a customs official? Customs official is a person that knows ahead of time what's foreign, what's illegal, what shouldn't be smuggled in. A jazz improviser is someone who is grounded in the basics but can freely spring from that in the moment. So one of the grave difficulties with psychotherapy, and one of the things that spirituality done mindfully and carefully can do, is help us be more jazz improvisers rather than customs officials. Because the second I would be a customs official with Sam's client, I think she would conform to me, she'd be a good girl in a Winnicottian sense, she'd accommodate and be false self, and she would lose any chance of real. She might feel initially more peaceful, initially more serene, initially a little more spacious, and we'd be selling down the river any chance that she might have of a life that could truly be her own. So am I answering your question? So I'd give her the space for all of this to come up, and I would try to first explore on a very deep level this tension between wanting a husband, wanting love, and how she understands that she characteristically co-creates a world where it's impossible to have. The man's too old, the man's unloving, the man's unself-reflective. That's the place that I would start. Now, in what I do, which I call meditative psychotherapy, the first thing is listening in a very different way than we ordinarily listen. And I'd like to illustrate it. So I'd like to suggest that we close our eyes for a moment and bring our attention to our bodies. So I'd like you to do this right now. Get in a physically comfortable position, back reasonably straight, alert and relaxed. Let your eyes be closed really gently. Let your jaw be slack. Since we're going to be breathing through the nose, I'd like to invite you to close your mouths. Relax your chest and relax your shoulders. And see if you can gently, playfully pull the air to the back of the throat. We'll make a little hissing sound. Make believe that we made a garden together. And we don't want to trample on any of the flowers, any of the beautiful shoots. So we're breathing as gently and easefully as possible. We can start by gently pressing the abdomen towards the spine. on the exhale, and then begin. Very good. Keeping your eyes closed. If the breath is comfortable, continue with it for another moment or two. If it's not comfortable, open your mouth and breathe normally. Now what I'd like you to do is imagine that you're an emotional hostess. There's a wonderful Rumi poem that gets at this, The Guest House. Let them in, let them all in. And it's really a metaphor about emotional hostessing. Imagine you're a hostess at a party, and you're leaving space for everybody. People who see things differently, people who are atheists, people who are deists, Buddhists, Sikh, Jewish, Christian, Catholic. There's space for everybody. Hindu, space for everyone. And just settle into that space and just let be whatever arises. Giving space to it. Seeing if we can join Sam in getting to a deeper level to help this woman in pain. Let's do that for a moment together. Gently and slowly open your eyes and return your attention to the room. We have time constraints, and we all want to be sensitive to giving you as much time to enter in. I just have a quick question, though. Did anyone get a new perspective on the case, or did a new image come up, or a new feeling, or did you hear the same information but you held it slightly more spaciously? Did that happen to anyone sitting here?
Just that she needs to complete something with her father, obviously, that she'll never complete. And Eva Paraka says you just have to, the path work. She says you're never going to complete the childhood stuff. You just have to realize it and let it go, put it in a box, and move on. Anyway, that's what came to me.
Well, I was a little bit blocked from the very beginning when you said, let's... I'm sorry. Okay. My name is Diana, and I work with clients in a kind of similar way. However, I take myself totally out of the equation. I work with the soul. I connect with the soul on soul level of the patient. And so when you said, let's help her, then I was a little bit blocked because that put me into the healer position, and normally I'm not in that position. I'm just there to facilitate soul to soul. The soul of the other person knows what healing has to take place. I don't have to know, the person doesn't have to know, but the soul of that person knows what is best at that very moment.
The reason I had the exercise, if anyone else, we won't go around because of time, although you can share later.
Well, we'll have an opportunity after
Later, okay.
the initial discussion to...
Well, we'll get to it. The reason is I
responses.
wanted to give you a flavor of how we could come into the room, spiritual practitioners, therapists, people with life substance, and the sitting down and giving ourselves a little space just to be, just to pay attention, just that little bit. I purposely did a little bit. We did a little bit of yogic breathing. That was the first exercise we gave, and then something modified from Buddhist meditation. Just that little bit can give you a taste of opening up awareness and diving deeper. So the first aspect of meditative therapy, this is also an answer to your question, is to listen on a qualitatively different level. And then to create in the room a kind of moving meditation. So just like Tai Chi is a moving meditation, sessions can be moving meditations. What's moving is the consciousness and the awareness of both people with the primary focus on one.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I think I'm ready for a very deep meditation session now. I think you put us all in a meditative mood. I'd like to turn it over to Locke.